What's up, my fellow gamers? Hope you're all having an award-winning day. I'm actually kinda sick today, so hopefully I don't sound too bad. You may be wondering why I'm making a video about this topic now of all times while it's still 5 months away. I just want to mention that I meant to make this video at least 8 months ago. But I kept pushing it back because at the end of the day, I honestly don't really care about it enough. Then something interesting happened this month, but that was like 2 weeks ago as of writing this, so I was like, okay, let's make it now. But then I kept putting it off and putting it off again, so here we are, with probably the worst timed video ever made on this topic, the Game Awards. The yearly show for us gamers to have some form of mainstream validation for our little hobby, right? Let's be real, it's kind of a clown show. And does anyone really care about the awards aside from the lowest common denominator of fanboys?
And the game of the year is...
Spider-Man 2.
Baldur's Gate 3.
Well, it turns out that it's been announced that this award show is going to be getting some competition. That's right, boys, it's totally Jover for Jeff Keighley, as his The Game Awards will be bending the knee to the new arbiters of what's good and what's not in this industry. The real Game Awards.
Wow! How original!
Now, before we get into that, obviously we need to talk about the Game Awards first, and why it is bad in its current state, or at least why it's perceived that way. I, for one, don't think this show even needs to exist at all, but having something like it to recognize the best and most interesting things coming out of the industry isn't all that bad in theory, and admittedly there's a part of me that wants something like that to exist. Jeff Keighley and his crew seem to really want to emulate other media awards shows like the Oscars, Grammys, Emmys, etc., but for video games, and that's where I and probably many others have a huge problem. It's like they want to have that same level of so-called prestige that these other shows have, but it really is entirely unnecessary. The gaming industry has been more profitable than Hollywood for a long time now. We don't need validation from that antiquated hive of scum and villainy. Anyway, I have a list of things that I would do if I was in charge of the Game Awards, and this was meant to be the main topic if I had made this video back when the Game Awards was relevant and not 8 months later. But we'll go over it quickly, and keep in mind, this is just my own opinion on how I think this kind of show would be better suited for actual gamers like myself. Starting with something I think a lot of people won't agree with me on. I don't care about or watch TV and movies, like at all, so I would remove anything related to movies and TV shows from the event. That includes video game IP adaptations. Why? Because I want the focus to be on video games, and cater to nerds like myself who pretty much only care about that form of media. In addition, I would remove any appearances by Hollywood celebrities, and replace them with personalities that are popular and entertaining in the gaming scene. Not industry insiders, but YouTubers and streamers, things like that. I would rather have someone like Markiplier announcing awards than someone like Ryan fucking Johnson who has nothing to do with video games. I would also cut out music performances for everything except right before announcing best soundtrack. These just pad out the show and make it longer than it needs to be, leaving less time to celebrate the actual winners of the awards. I would also remove Games for Impact entirely. This award is too subjective and only rewards those with progressive leftist politics anyway. I would also cut out Most Anticipated Game. It's a pointless award and only encourages fake hype and pre-orders. For esports, I'm kind of on the fence since it has a lot of awards that nobody seems to care about, even the show itself, as they always just speed through these categories. I would remove esports event and coach awards because nobody cares about the coaches, and nominating events is nothing but advertising for the biggest ones only. For the trailers and ads, I would make a hard limitation, only allowing games that have not been shown off prior to this event. I would also want to cut down on the advertisement's time as much as I can, but I get it. Might not be tenable unless you move the event outside of California to cut the budget down. For indie nominations, I would change this so that you cannot be nominated if you have a publisher, no matter how small that publisher is. Maybe to contrast that, since it would exclude a lot of games, I could add another award for Best Single A or Small Budget Game, which includes any game that was made with under, I don't know, 200,000 or something? I honestly have no idea how low the number should be. I would also add a separate Best Remake/Remaster category, and also exclude remakes and remasters from pretty much every other category so that the rest of the awards are more focused on things that are brand new. I would also make the nomination pool much bigger. Each category usually has 5 or 6 options, but I would increase that to 10. Every time this show happens, we always see the same handful of games across multiple awards categories, so this would be a great way to widen the pool and make the show a lot more interesting. There's so many great games that come out each year that barely get any recognition, and the Game Awards as it is now only enables that. Another big problem the Game Awards has is that the actual award choices are entirely driven by industry insiders and not actual video game players. Don't let that little 10% fan voting fool you. The difference that makes is negligible at best. Question is, how do we include the actual video game players more without opening up the polls to abuse with bots and the like? It's not a cut and dry situation, and the new Game Awards alternative seems to have a potential solution, maybe, but we'll get to that. If we can open it up to the audience, it should be at least changed to 50% gamers, 50% insiders. As much as I'd want to exclude journalists and insiders entirely, I know that's not an option really, so this is the best alternative. Now, the most important thing that needs to be changed about the Game Awards is the date. We're supposed to be rounding up all the best games of the year, and yet so many games from that year are cut off from nomination because it's held the first week of fucking December. So pretty much anything that comes out in December and late November is cut off from eligibility. How does that make any sense? Seriously. The only reason I can think of is advertising dollars, like early December is still a good time to advertise shit for the holidays or something. Other than that, I can't think of a damn thing. If it was up to me, this would be held in the second or third week of January at the absolute earliest. Anyway, that's all I got for what I would do if I was in charge. Let me know what you think about in the comments below if these changes I listed would make you more interested in the show, or if you have any additional ideas on how to improve it. Now, on to the main topic of why I'm making this video in July 2024. Enter Stuttering Craig. If you don't know who he is, Craig was one of the original members of Screw Attack back in the day. Now, he's most famous for his new podcast, Side Scrollers, which has been going on for a few years, I think. Basically, it's a growing daily show that centers around video games and entertainment, mostly inspired by video games, which is why I started watching the show. Yep, I actually kinda like the show and Craig, and what he's doing with the show is not bad. Mostly. It does come off as a right-leaning political/culture war show, especially considering some of the guests he has on regularly, and that's something that will be relevant in a bit. Now, a few months back, Craig decided to try something new called Take Games Back, which at a glance looked like a movement to take the overall narrative of the gaming industry away from the mainstream journalists, many of whom have gone off the deep end lately, like what the fuck. Tune into my RNG series at the end of each month to see for yourself.
100% but fucking sane.
But no, that was just a placeholder title for the actual reason this was created. The real Game Awards.
Right.
See, we're not even past the title and I already have a problem. Calling it the real Game Awards is cringe as hell, not gonna lie. The title throws shade at the original Game Awards by implying that the whole thing is illegitimate or fake or corrupt beyond reproach. Even if I were to agree with any of that, it still rubs me the wrong way. Like the whole thing is titled entirely to throw shade at an existing property rather than standing on its own. Honestly, on that alone, I don't think I could get behind this project. And the thing that sucks is that I actually don't think this whole thing is a bad idea. The Game Awards could use some competition, I guess. I mean, if the Game Awards just got better, this wouldn't need to exist, right? Other than that, I think the mainstream narrative being taken away from the establishment press would be a good thing overall for us. Most of them are heavily compromised, whether it's due to conflicts of interest, such as sites like IGN, reviewing the games that they are paid to advertise for, or the fact that they are all in an ideological bubble and all have the same opinions and like to shove them into unrelated topics, the Game Awards included. Remember, Games for Impact is an award that exists. But here's where the problems come in. Firstly, I don't think Craig is the right person for the job on this. My impression of Craig on the Side Scrollers podcast is someone who is still kinda out of touch with the modern video game market, more so than Jeff Keighley. He seems to know retro gaming, as in pre-6th generation, like the back of his hand, but beyond that is where his knowledge dwindles. I could be wrong, and in his defense, he's a family man with multiple kids of his own now, so it's to be expected that he might not be able to keep up properly. But if I were in his shoes, I would get someone on board who is a lot more in tune with the market to host the show. Who? I honestly have no idea, but as of right now, he does have a few others on board, the first being D-Day Cobra, the founder of Geeks and Gamers. I don't really know a lot about their content other than they are clearly one-sided culture warriors based on what you can see on their channel. He's also allegedly a lifelong Nintendo fan just like Craig, so confirmation bias much?
It's over.
Next is Mark the Cyborg, who I don't know much about at all either. I've seen him on the Side Scrollers once, but I don't remember anything about it. Lastly, we have Kabrutus, who I have been following since he got thrust into the culture war by simply saying no to certain racist consultant groups that have slithered their way into the gaming industry and have seemingly done nothing but damage to it. But I think Kabrutus being on board is fine, based on what I've seen from him. He does seem to have a love for video games, but he also lives in Japan now, which could be an issue. Fortunately, one thing they have laid out very clearly on the board page is that they are not allowed to vote, be on any press lists, receive perks from developers, or work for any traditional access gaming media companies. If they hold to this, that's a good thing. But the fact that many of the people involved are going to be heavily ingrained in the culture war makes me suspect this show will be compromised in some way as well, just on the opposing side of the current mainstream, which is why I don't think any of them are good hosts for something like this. We'll have to wait and see. Another issue that many people bring up that makes people think this is a massive grift is the fact that voting is paywalled with a requirement of $30 per year to vote. I have mixed opinions on this. For one, there is utility in paywalling it like this because doing so will heavily reduce the incentive to use bots to vote and ruin the integrity of the voting system. I think $30 is a bit steep for voting though, and I would probably swap that with the $15 tier you can see on the screen and make it only $10 to vote. I don't think making it free would be wise, as these subscriptions are going to be the primary and I think only source of funding for these events. For those who don't know, Craig has said that he wants this to be an in-person event once he can afford it, so it's going to require more than you may think, even if he hosts it in his home state of Texas. I do think there should be a free voting option, however. And like the Game Awards currently does, they could count free votes as a lesser percentage of the overall vote count. Obviously, there will still need to be bot protections in place, but I think this would assuage concerns about the paid voting aspect being unfair or whatever. It will at least be more fair than the current Game Awards. Another issue I have is with the audience of this event, side-scrollers, geeks and gamers, etc. This is me making a lot of assumptions, but as of now, the only people who will influence the results of this awards poll are people who are heavily mired in culture war nonsense, because those are the only people who are willing to pay $30 to vote on this. This is another reason why it needs a free option to vote. It will open it up to a more general audience, and maybe after the first one, if the show is a success and people like it, maybe they will be inclined to throw in some monetary support. But the way things are now, the results will be heavily skewed and likely not representative of the gaming audience as a whole. I assume that's the goal here, right? To make it for gamers generally and not for the access media, insiders, investors, etc., right? This could make the show more like competition to the Game Awards rather than just a niche alternative, but again, I'm just some guy on the internet speculating about things I probably don't have all the details on. Lastly, one thing I do know for sure. Why do millions of people actually watch the Game Awards now? I don't think it's the awards at all. I think the main draw is the world premieres, new trailers and announcements of new games to look forward to, which is a lot more important to the gaming audience than an award that goes to the developers. What other than awards does the real Game Awards offer to a viewer? For me, I'm going to watch it to cover it on the channel if I think it's worth covering, obviously. But what about anyone else who doesn't create content? Also, what do the developers get out of winning an award? It's probably not going to be big enough the first time around to offer any incentives to developers making good games other than a tiny minority of people watching maybe going to check something out they haven't played before. Maybe. On the other hand, featuring trailers and reveals and the like requires them to take money for ad space and sponsors, which then compromises the integrity of the awards. Maybe. I suppose it depends on how they go about it, like taking non-gaming company sponsors only. But it seems like Craig doesn't want to do any of that, which I totally understand. It's going to be a steep uphill battle though. At the end of the day, despite my numerous criticisms, I actually do hope that this little event will be successful and executed properly. Just as I wish the Game Awards would make their show better. If not though, well, maybe it'll get the same smoke I give to the Game Awards at the end of every year. Just saying. But anyway, that's all I got for this video that probably nobody will watch, but if you did, feel free to leave a comment on what you think. If you like this video, feel free to throw me a like and a sub. I don't upload super often, so I won't spam your feed with time-sensitive topics like the Culture Warriors do. But feel free to check out a relevant little series I do called Random News of Gaming, or RNG, where I only make one video a month to round up all the important news into one place and show off some interesting new games that have come out within the past month or two that might not have gotten the coverage they deserve. Or check out my top 10 videos, which I will be making another one around the time the new Zelda comes out, the top 10 moments in The Legend of Zelda. Or catch me live at random times, other than every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern for his public Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Arena. Feel free to follow me on Rumble or Odyssey if you want to watch me outside of YouTube, or the X-Twitter where I post nothing. Always. And as always with this award-winning industry, have high standards, low expectations.